In a quiet backwater, in the middle of endless fields, stood an old barn owned by a young farmer named Nicholas. One summer day, a rumble like thunder shook his barn, sending chickens scurrying around the yard in panic, and Nicholas' favorite wrench flew off its hook. After dropping the tractor part he was repairing, Nicholas ran outside, expecting to see another meteorite. They have become frequent visitors in these parts lately. Instead of a meteorite, he saw a smooth silver object the size of his pickup truck, piercing through the roof of the barn and leaving behind wisps of purple smoke. "If this is some kind of government experiment," muttered Nicholas, cautiously approaching. The surface of the object resembled liquid mercury, and despite the collision with the roof, there was not a scratch on it. Suddenly, a crack appeared on the smooth metal, which began to spread like ripples on water. Nicholas took a step back, instinctively grabbing the pitchfork leaning against the barn wall. The object opened with a soft hiss, releasing even more purple smoke. A female figure emerged from it, and Nicholas' jaw dropped. She was tall, graceful, and completely purple, and not a garish purple like grape soda, but a rich, ethereal shade that seemed to shimmer in the afternoon sun. Her facial features were striking, almost too perfect, as if someone had taken all the classic beauty standards and enhanced them a little, just enough to make her seem ethereal. Her clothes, which resembled liquid silver, clung to her figure, as if ignoring the laws of terrestrial physics. She looked into his eyes, tilted her head and smiled. "Ah, great! You are exactly what I am looking for." Nicholas blinked. "I'm what?" "So wonderfully ordinary," she exclaimed, clapping her hands. "The perfect embodiment of physical mediocrity. You're perfect for a wedding ceremony." "What's that?" Nicholas took another step back, almost tripping over his own shoes. "Oh, I'm sorry for my lack of manners," she bowed gracefully. "I am Princess Amelia of the Seventh Nebula, and I have chosen you as my consort. This is our tradition. The more unremarkable the husband, the more the bride's beauty shines at the ceremony." Nicholas ran a hand through his messy brown hair, trying to process this information. "Listen, Your Highness, I think there's been some mistake. I'm just a farmer, and I'm not going to." She suddenly screamed, hiding behind his back. "The predator! Quickly, protect your future wife." Nicholas looked where she was pointing. It's a chicken. An evil creature with a red crest. It's clearly a bloodthirsty predator." She peeked over his shoulder, her breath burning his neck. "This is Barbara. She's laying eggs." Nicholas couldn't help but laugh. "Have you never seen a chicken before?" Amelia straightened up, trying to maintain her dignity. "Of course I have. In historical documents. They were much bigger. In the archives. Planet-destroying monsters." "They were dinosaurs," Nicholas corrected. "Chickens are their very distant, very small relatives." "I knew it," she snorted, and then her face cleared. "Oh, what is it? Is this one of your earthly delicacies?" Before he could stop her, she grabbed a potato from the nearest basket and bit into it like an apple. "Wait, it's raw." Amelia's face twisted in disgust, but she forced herself to swallow. How simple. You earthlings have such interesting tastes." "It must be prepared first, of course. I've been checking on you." She wiped her mouth carefully. "You have passed another test. One more point in favor of our marriage." On the outskirts of a small town surrounded by endless meadows, there was a dilapidated barn owned by a young mechanic named Michael. One hot summer day, a sharp thunderclap shook his workshop, causing pigeons to fly off the roof in fright, and Michael's favorite set of tools fell off the shelf. Dropping the disassembled engine of the motorcycle he was repairing, Michael ran outside, expecting to see another meteor shower. They had been happening a lot in these places lately. Instead of meteors, he saw a shining silver object the size of his van, piercing through the roof of a barn and leaving a plume of emerald smoke. Probably another military test. Michael muttered, cautiously approaching closer. The surface of the object looked like molten silver, and despite the collision with the roof, there was not a single dent on it. Suddenly, a crack appeared on the smooth metal, which began to expand like ripples on water. Michael took a step back, automatically grabbing a crowbar that stood against the wall of the barn. The object opened with a soft whistle, releasing clouds of emerald smoke. A female figure came out of it, and Michael's jaw almost dropped in surprise. She was tall, graceful, and completely emerald in color, not a poisonous green like concentrated lemonade, but a noble, iridescent shade that seemed to glow in the evening sun. Her facial features were amazingly beautiful, almost unnaturally perfect, as if someone had taken all the canons of beauty and slightly exaggerated them, just enough to make her seem out of this world. Her clothes, which resembled liquid metal, clung to her figure, as if ignoring the laws of gravity. She looked into his eyes, tilted her head slightly and smiled. "Excellent. You're just what I'm looking for." Michael blinked. "I'm what?" "So delightfully ordinary," she exclaimed, clapping her hands joyfully. "The perfect embodiment of the mundane. You're perfect for a bonding ritual." "What's that?" Michael took another step back, almost tripping over the scattered tools. "Oh, forgive my tactlessness," she gracefully curtsied. "I am Princess Isabella of the 9th Galaxy, and I have chosen you as my partner. This is our tradition, the simpler the partner, the brighter the bride shines during the ceremony." Michael ran a hand through his tousled brown hair, trying to process what he'd just heard. "Listen, Your Highness, I think you've made a mistake. I'm just a mechanic, and I'm not going to." She suddenly screamed, hiding behind his back. "The monster! Hurry up, protect your future wife." Michael looked where she was pointing. It's a cat. A furry creature with green eyes. It's definitely a bloodthirsty monster." She peeked over his shoulder, her breath brushing his neck. "This is Merca. She catches mice." Michael couldn't help but smile. "Have you never seen a cat before?" Isabella straightened up, trying to maintain her dignity. "Of course I have. In ancient manuscripts. They were much bigger. In the archives. Terrifying predators. They were saber-toothed tigers," Michael corrected. "Cats are their very distant, very small descendants." "I knew it," she snorted, and then her face cleared. "Oh, what is it? Is this one of your earthly delicacies?" Before he could stop her, she grabbed an onion from a nearby drawer and took a bite out of it like an apple. "Wait, it's raw." Isabella's face contorted in disgust, but she forced herself to swallow. How peculiar. You Earthlings have such interesting preferences. It must be prepared first, of course. I was just checking on you." She wiped her mouth carefully. "You have passed another test. Another argument in favor of our union." Late in the evening, when the sun had already disappeared below the horizon and the sky was turning purple, Michael found Isabella on the porch of his house. She gazed thoughtfully at the stars, and her emerald skin shimmered in the twilight. "Do you miss home?" Michael asked, sitting down next to her. Isabella sighed. "Yes and no. I miss my family, my irresponsibilities. But here it's different." "Calm down." She ran her hand through her hair. "Don't you regret sheltering me?" Michael smiled. "After we hijacked a spaceship together and sold the technology to the Galactic Federation, I think my life will never be the same again. In a good way." He looked up at the sky. "And you know, watching you trying to figure out why earthly things are needed is more fun than fixing tractors." Isabella snorted. "I perfectly understand the purpose of earthly things. It's just that your customs are peculiar." Suddenly, lights appeared in the distance. "Hunters," Isabella said softly, her cheerful mood instantly evaporating. "They're back. And this time, it seems, with reinforcements." "The cellar won't save us," Michael said, frowning. "They probably have scanners that can see through walls." "Then we have one way out." Isabella grabbed his arm. "Let's run." They rushed to Michael's van, which, thanks to the princess's efforts, was now equipped not only with a cloaking device, but also with several other useful alien gadgets. "Where are we going?" Michael asked, starting the engine. "There's a place," Isabella replied, her eyes glittering in the dark. "They won't find us there." As they raced through the night roads, pursued by several hunter ships, Isabella explained her plan. It turns out that in the archives she studied, there were mentions of an ancient abandoned base on one of the moons of Jupiter. This base, built by an unknown race, was equipped with a powerful defense system that could hide them from any pursuers. Upon reaching the spaceport, which, to Michael's surprise, turned out to be hidden under an old abandoned movie theater, they quickly boarded their modified spaceship van. The pursuit continued in space, but thanks to Michael's skillful maneuvers and Isabella's technology, they managed to break away from the hunters and reach the moon of Jupiter. The base, as described in the archives, was huge and deserted. Its walls, covered with strange symbols, radiated a faint glow. It was cold and quiet inside, and the air was filled with a strange, tickling smell. "It's safe here," Isabella said, looking around. "For a while." "And then what?" asked Michael. Isabella looked at him, her emerald eyes shining with determination. "Then we'll start a new life. Far away from the Federation, from the hunters, from anyone who wants to control us." She smiled. "We'll find something new to do. Maybe we'll become space smugglers? Or should we open an intergalactic snack bar? There are many options." Michael laughed. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely," replied Isabella. "Life is too short to waste on political marriages and boring ceremonies." She came closer to him, her breath brushing his cheek. "What do you think, Michael? Are you ready for a new adventure?" After several days spent as a guide for the most unusual guest, Michael began to get used to Isabella's presence. Her reactions to everyday life in the workshop ranged from comical to disturbing. "Michael, your metal beast is making strange noises," she shouted one morning from the barn. Michael rushed there and saw Isabella watching his welding with a mixture of curiosity and horror. "It's called welding, it's completely normal," Michael explained. "Amazing," Isabella drawled, thoughtfully walking around the welding machine. "Does it work on all earth metals?" "Maybe if we try it on you." "What?" "No." Michael's face turned red. "It's not like that. Just no." She grinned, "Your complexion speaks of embarrassment." "How charming." Later that day, he found her standing in a puddle, proudly showing off his rubber boots. "I have discovered your Earth portals for moving in a liquid state," she announced solemnly. "It's a puddle, from the rain." Michael replied wearily. "Then why do you have special shoes for traveling on them?" "Obviously, these are dangerous moving devices." She lifted one boot experimentally. "I'm pretty brave, you know." Despite her strange behavior, Michael began to get used to her presence. She was smart in her own way, quick to grasp earthly customs, even if she interpreted them in her own way. And, although he would never admit it, he enjoyed their verbal exchanges. The peaceful routine was disrupted one evening when they noticed lights in the distance. "The hunters are back." "They brought molecular scanners," Isabella said, and her playful mood instantly evaporated. "The cellar won't save us." "Then we have one way out," Michael grabbed her hand. "Let's run." They rushed to the van, which, thanks to the princess's efforts, was now equipped not only with a cloaking device, but also with several other useful alien devices. "Are you sure this is going to work?" asked Isabella, watching Michael install some kind of strange device on the dashboard. "My grandfather was a bit of an inventor," Michael replied with a grin. "And maybe not exactly from Earth. I'm sure he left some surprises in that van." As the lights of the hunters approached, Michael started the engine, and the van, making a strange humming sound, soared into the air. "Do you have levitation technology?" exclaimed Isabella. "Perhaps you are not as simple as you seem." "Stop complimenting my routine," Michael snapped, "and hold on tight." They raced through the night sky, pursued by several hunter ships. "They're gaining on us," shouted Isabella, watching the pursuers through the rear window. "Not for long," Michael grinned, abruptly changing course and steering the van into the clouds. On the edge of a small settlement, lost among endless wheat fields, there was an old garage owned by a young craftsman named Martin. One sultry summer day, a sharp thunderclap shook his workshop, startling sparrows on the roof and knocking Martin's favorite set of screwdrivers off the workbench. Leaving the disassembled carburetor he was working on, Martin ran outside, expecting to see another car. They had become frequent visitors to the area lately. Instead of the car, he saw a sparkling egg-shaped object, the size of his minibus, piercing through the roof of the garage and leaving behind a plume of orange smoke. It must be some kind of secret test again, Martin muttered, cautiously approaching. The surface of the object resembled polished amber, and despite the collision with the roof, there was not a scratch on it. Suddenly, a crack appeared on the smooth surface, which began to grow like a spider web on glass. Martin took a step back, instinctively reaching for the wrench on the workbench. The object opened with a soft click, releasing clouds of orange smoke. A female figure stepped out of it, and Martin's breath caught in surprise. She was tall, slender, and entirely orange in color, not bright orange, like orange juice, but a soft, mother-of-pearl shade that seemed to shimmer in the rays of the setting sun. Her facial features were extraordinarily beautiful, almost unrealistically perfect, as if someone had taken the best beauty samples and slightly improved them, just enough to make her seem unearthly. Her clothes, which resembled flowing gold, clung to her figure, as if not obeying the laws of gravity. She looked into his eyes, gracefully bowed her head and smiled. "It's great. You're exactly who I'm looking for." Martin blinked. "Who am I?" So delightfully inconspicuous, she exclaimed, clapping her hands in delight. "The perfect embodiment of simplicity. You'll be perfect for the bonding ritual." "What's that?" Martin took another step back, almost stepping on the scattered parts. "Oh, forgive my indiscretion," she curtsied gracefully. "I am Princess Valeria of the 12th constellation, and I have chosen you as my chosen one. This is our tradition, the more modest the chosen one, the brighter the bride shines during the ritual." Martin ran a hand through his tousled dark hair, trying to process what he had just heard. "Listen, Your Highness, I think there's been some mistake. I'm just a mechanic, and I don't intend to." She suddenly screamed, hiding behind his back. "The beast! Save, protect your future spouse." Martin looked where she was pointing. It's a dog. A friendly creature with a wagging tail. It's definitely a bloodthirsty monster." She peeked over his shoulder, her breath burning his ear. "This is Bobik. He's barking at the postman." Martin couldn't help but laugh. "Have you never seen a dog before?" Valeria straightened up, trying to keep her composure. "Of course I have. In ancient manuscripts. They were much bigger. In the archives. Scary monsters." "They were wolves," Martin corrected. "Dogs are their very distant, very friendly descendants." "I knew it," she snorted, and then her face cleared. "Oh, what is it? Is this one of your earthly treats?" Before he could stop her, she grabbed a head of garlic from a nearby drawer and bit into it like an apple. "Wait, it's raw garlic." Valeria's face twisted into a grimace, but she swallowed. How unusual. You earthlings have such peculiar tastes. It should be added to food, of course. I was just checking on you." She delicately wiped her mouth. "You have passed another test. Another argument in favor of our union." At dusk, when the sky turned orange, Martin found Valeria sitting on the porch of her house. She gazed thoughtfully at the sunset, her orange skin shimmering in the last rays of the sun. "Are you homesick?" Martin asked, sitting down next to her. Valeria sighed. "Yes and no. I miss my family, my irresponsibilities. But here it's different. Peaceful." She ran her hand through her hair. "Don't you regret sheltering me?" Martin smiled. "After we hijacked a spaceship together and sold the technology to the Galactic Council, I think my life won't be the same anymore. In a good way, of course." He looked up at the sky. And you know, watching you trying to figure out the purpose of earthly things is much more interesting than fixing cars. Valeria chuckled. I perfectly understand the purpose of earthly things. It's just that your customs are peculiar. Suddenly, lights appeared in the distance. Bloodhounds, Valeria said softly, and her carefree mood instantly disappeared. They're back. And this time, it seems, they are not alone. The basement won't save us, Martin said, frowning. They probably have scanners that can see through walls. Then we have one way out, Valeria grabbed his arm. Let's run. They rushed to Martin's minibus, which, thanks to the princess's efforts, was now equipped not only with a cloaking device, but also with several other useful alien devices. Where are we going? Asked Martin, starting the engine. There is one place, Valeria replied, her eyes glittering in the twilight. They won't find us there. As they raced along the night roads, pursued by several bloodhound ships, Valeria explained her plan. It turns out that in the archives she studied, there were mentions of an ancient abandoned station on one of Saturn's moons. This station, built by an unknown civilization, was equipped with a powerful defense system that could hide them from any pursuers. When they reached the spaceport, which, to Martin's amazement, turned out to be hidden under an old abandoned bus station, they quickly boarded their upgraded spaceship minibus. The pursuit continued in space, but thanks to Martin's clever maneuvers and Valeria's technology, they managed to break away from the bloodhounds and reach Saturn's moon. The station, as described in the archives, was huge and abandoned. Its walls, covered with strange symbols, radiated a faint glow. It was cold and quiet inside, and the air was filled with a strange, tickling scent. It's safe here, Valeria said, looking around. For a while. And then what? Asked Martin. Valeria looked at him, her orange eyes shining with determination. Then we'll start a new life. Away from the council, from the bloodhounds, from everyone who wants to control us. She smiled. We'll find something new to do. Maybe we can become space merchants? Or should we open an intergalactic cafe? There are many options. Martin laughed. Are you serious? Absolutely, Valeria replied. Life is too short to waste on political marriages and boring ceremonies. She came closer to him, her breath brushing his cheek. What do you think, Martin? Are you ready for new adventures? After several weeks spent at Martin's farm, Valeria began to get used to the realities of the Earth. Her reaction to simple things continued to amaze Martin. Martin, your metal beast is making terrible noises, she screamed one day when she heard the sound of a chainsaw running. Martin hurried over to her and found Valeria watching him with a mixture of horror and curiosity. It's a chainsaw, I'm sawing wood, Martin explained. Amazing, Valeria drawled, thoughtfully walking around the chainsaw. Does it work on all Earth materials? Perhaps if we try it on you. No, no, and no. Martin's face turned crimson. That's not how it works at all. She smiled slyly, your complexion speaks of embarrassment. How funny. Later that day, he found her experimenting with his fishing rod. I have found an ancient tool for catching aquatic creatures, Valeria solemnly declared, waving a fishing rod. It's a fishing rod, Martin replied wearily. But why catch these creatures? Can't you just go into the water and take them? She threw the rod with such force that the line got tangled in the branches of a nearby tree. I suppose it takes some skill, she said, trying to untangle the line. Despite all her oddities, Martin was getting used to her presence. She was smart, quick to grasp Earth customs, though she interpreted them in her own way. And, although he would never admit it, he liked their funny dialogues. This idyll was disrupted that evening when they saw familiar lights in the sky. The bloodhounds are back. They brought neural scanners with them, Valeria said, her cheerful mood instantly evaporating. The basement won't save us anymore. Then we have one way out, Martin grabbed her arm. Run away. They rushed to the minibus, which, thanks to the princess's efforts, was now equipped not only with a cloaking device, but also with other amazing alien gadgets. Are you sure that this construction of yours will fly? Valeria asked, watching Martin insert a small crystal into the dashboard. My grandfather was not only a mechanic, Martin replied with a smile. And it looks like he wasn't just an earthling. I'm sure he left a couple of surprises in that van. As the lights of the bloodhounds approached, Martin started the engine, and the minibus, making a strange melodious sound, rose smoothly into the air. Do you have anti-gravity technology? Exclaimed Valeria. So you're not as simple as you seem. Stop complimenting my mundanity, Martin snapped. And hold on tight. They raced across the night sky, pursued by several bloodhound ships. They're coming, shouted Valeria, watching the pursuers through the rear window. We're going to surprise them now, Martin grinned, abruptly changing course and steering the minibus towards the mountain range. After a few days, which Michael spent as a guide for his unusual guest, he began to get used to the presence of Isabella. Her reactions to the mundane things in his workshop ranged from funny to disturbing. Michael, your metal beast is making strange noises, she exclaimed one morning when she heard the sound of a working drill. Michael hurried into the workshop and saw Isabella watching with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension as he drilled a hole in a metal plate. It's called a drill, and it's completely normal, Michael explained. Amazing, Isabella drawled, thoughtfully walking around the drill. Does it work on all Earth materials? And if we try it on you? No, no, no. Michael's face turned red. That's not what it's meant for. She smiled slyly, your complexion speaks of embarrassment. How sweet. Later that day, he found her experimenting with his garden hose. I found an ancient tool for controlling water flows, said Isabella solemnly, hosing flowers. It's a watering hose, Michael replied wearily. But can't we just summon rain, like we do on my planet? She directed a jet of water at Michael, drenching him from head to toe. Oh, I'm sorry, I think I misunderstood the principle of operation. Despite all her oddities, Michael was getting used to her presence. She was smart, quick to grasp earthly customs, even if she interpreted them in a very peculiar way. And, although he would never admit it, he liked their funny dialogues. This peaceful life was disrupted in the evening when they noticed familiar lights on the horizon. The bloodhounds are back. They brought neural disruptors with them, Isabella said, and her light-hearted mood vanished in an instant. The basement won't protect us. Then we have one way out, Michael grabbed her hand. Fly away. They rushed to the van, which, thanks to the princess's efforts, was now equipped not only with a cloaking device, but also with other amazing alien gadgets. Do you know for sure that this car of yours will fly to space? Isabella asked, watching Michael insert a small crystal into the dashboard. My grandfather wasn't just a mechanic, Michael replied with a sly smile. He was a genius. I'm sure he left a couple of surprises in that van. As the sniffer lights approached, Michael started the engine, and the van, making a strange melodious sound, rose smoothly into the air. Do you have an anti-gravity engine? Exclaimed Isabella. It looks like you're not as simple as you seem. Stop admiring my ordinariness, Michael snapped, and hold on tight. They raced across the night sky, pursued by several bloodhound ships. They're getting closer, shouted Isabella, watching the pursuers through the rear window. Don't worry, we'll show them now, Michael grinned, abruptly changing course and steering the van towards the nearest lake. Ariella, leaning against the wall of the barn, watched as Nate fiddled with some device retrieved from the wreckage of her ship. Are you sure you know what you're doing? She asked, crossing her arms over her chest. My grandmother always said, if it's broken, fix it, if it's not fixed, take it apart and put it back together, Nate replied without looking up from his work. It sounds primitive, Ariella remarked. But it works, Nate smiled. Suddenly, the device in his hands lit up, and everything around them flickered. What is it? Ariella asked, startled. I have no idea, Nate replied, squinting at the strange glow. When the flickering stopped, they discovered that they were in some kind of strange, distorted space. The sky was painted in colors never seen before, and the trees around seemed to be made of liquid metal. It looks like we've activated some kind of portal, Ariella said, looking around. Or a time rift, Nate added, noticing how strangely time was distorted around them. Suddenly, figures appeared in the distance, similar to hunters, but much more grotesque. Their bodies were covered in spikes, and their eyes glowed with a sinister red light. "We need to get out of here," Ariella said, grabbing Nate's arm. They began to run, dodging the strange plants and rocks that seemed to come to life around them. The pursuers were persistent, and it seemed that this distorted space was playing into their hands. Nate and Ariella were trapped. "I have an idea," Nate whispered, stopping. He quickly explained his plan to Ariella, and despite his insanity, she agreed. Using the remnants of the ship's energy and Ariella's knowledge of quantum physics, they created an improvised disruptor that distorted the space around the pursuers, sending them to some other dimension. Ariella exclaimed as the distortion disappeared along with the hunters. "Temporarily," Nate replied, noticing that the portal they had entered through had begun to close. "We need to get back," shouted Ariella, and they rushed to the portal, managing to slip through it just a second before it slammed shut. They were back in the barn, out of breath and scratched, but unharmed. "That was interesting," Nate said, looking around. "I agree," Ariella replied, smiling. "But I don't want to go there anymore." 6 months later, Nate's farm became the busiest intergalactic trading post in the sector. Their wedding combined earthly traditions with alien customs. Chickens wearing tiny quantum stabilizers walked down the aisle, and a cornfield performed a synchronized light show during the ceremony. The Federation commander, now a frequent visitor, was forced to admit that their union had brought more positive changes than any political marriage. Earth's quantum-enhanced agriculture has revolutionized food production across the galaxy, and their trading post has become a symbol of peaceful cooperation between worlds. One evening, as 3 moons rose over their purple fields, Nate found Ariella in their favorite spot on the porch, looking up at the stars. "Don't you regret giving up the royal life?" he asked, sitting down next to her. She clung to him, her quantum ring creating small radiances around their intertwined hands. "Never. Although sometimes I miss the servants, especially when it's your turn to milk the quantum-enhanced cows." "Hey, you're the one who insisted on improving them because regular milk is boring," he grinned. "Besides, anti-gravity cows are a real hit of sales," she smiled. A ship appeared in the distance, another merchant who had arrived on business. Around them, their incredible farm hummed with the energy of 2 united worlds. Earthly simplicity and alien technological wonders created something completely new. "Ready for a new adventure?" Nate asked as the ship approached. Ariella stood up, straightening her jumpsuit, her favorite outfit lately, even though she had added a few quantum jewelry to it. "Always with you," she replied, helping him up. "Although next time, let's try not to accidentally create any more sensible vegetables." The talking carrots are getting philosophical again. Holding hands, they walked to their barn, which became a spaceport, ready to face everything that the universe had in store for them. After all, they've already proven that the most wonderful things in life happen when you're brave enough to crash land in love. And if sometimes their quantum chickens lay eggs that open small portals to other dimensions, well, it's just another day on the most unusual farm in the galaxy.